Yeah, I got it. All right, cool. Well, I'm Emmett.
I'm Jack.
So I'm the one from Charlotte, and then he's from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So we met each other the first week of school for our orientation week, and been pretty good buds. So it's pretty cool. But yeah.
You want to start with the first question?
Yeah, so we were just curious, interested about like just your background. We know like you started off with baseball, um, and we just wanted to know kind of what kind of carried you to what you are today. Just kind of brief.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and at the time when I was a kid, unlike nowadays, when I was growing up in like the '80s, there wasn't this crazy explosion of sports on TV, and I kind of always thought I wanted to be in TV, but it wasn't attainable. I thought that was just there's no possible way. But I actually started out. I went to college. I went to a small school in upstate New York called St. Lawrence University. I was a philosophy major just because I kind of just figured I wanted to be well-rounded, and I don't know, it seemed like a good idea to me. And I used to be a news reporter. That was my first job. I kind of really hustled and fought, and I networked, and I spent a couple of years just doing awful jobs. But I didn't luck. I earned this job as a news reporter at a TV station in Rochester, New York. And I was covering city council meetings and homicides and arsons. And it was tough, man. And I said at that point, you know what? I want to do TV sports. And I'm going to try every single possible thing I can do to get into play-by-play. And I just happened to pick up the phone that day. And I called the guy in Rochester, New York, who was the announcer for the minor league baseball team in Rochester, New York. And I said, man, I want to do what you're doing right now. How did you get started in the business? And it was the right call at the right time because he said, let's go out and hang out tonight. And I'd love to meet you. And maybe we'll hit it off. And so we hung out and had a couple chicken wings. And at the end of the night, he said, hey, I'm looking for a partner. If you're willing to do baseball games for $25 an hour, I'd love it if you were my partner. And I said, done. And so I gave up my apartment. I gave up my job. I gave up everything that I had. And I took this job for the summer, making $25 a game. And I fell in love with play-by-play. And I realized that there's, two types of people in this world: people who can do play-by-play and people who can't. It's kind of this art, this technical. But if you got a brain for it, you can do it. And so I felt that I had a brain for it, and I said, all eggs in that basket. I'm going to try and be a play-by-play guy because that's what I feel I was put on this earth to do.
That's awesome.
So that started, and that was back in the mid '90s, and then I had to take a couple steps back, and I was a pregame host and a sideline reporter, and I did a lot of other things like that. But ever since, I've been kind of aiming towards being a play-by-play guy, and that was as far back as 1996.
All right. So did you play a lot of baseball growing up, and that's why you kind of just wanted to do that to start off?
Yeah, I played everything. I was the type of kid that, I played baseball, basketball, football. I was always doing something. I was always outside. And the way that we always played is, if when you play basketball and you lost and you're on the side of the court, I would just do the play-by-play. I would come up with a nickname for everyone, and I just goof around, and I just rehearse basically. And it was great practice for me. And I did the same thing when I was playing baseball. Out in the field, I just chatter and I talk and I listened too. And I liked the way that people talked, and I liked the expressions, and I made mental notes. And so, yeah, a lot of what I do as a play-by-play announcer, everything is basically I've heard somewhere before, playing a baseball game or hanging out at a basketball gym or talking to a football coach. That's kind of where your lingo comes from. You just absorb it after years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. The next question we have for you, being with the Charlotte Hornets for a little bit, what was your most memorable moment when announcing for the Hornets?
Oh, wow. Well, Jeremy Lamb hit a half-court shot at the buzzer up in Toronto when Toronto was going great. And that was pretty cool. And I lost my voice, and thankfully we didn't have a game the next day. That was awesome, man, because you never see that, a game-winning half-court shot. But we've had a whole bunch of them. There was a shot way back when I fell in love with this guy named Troy Daniels that no one probably even remembers. But Troy Daniels hit this deep bomb in overtime in Sacramento. And these smart guys came up with the term, the miracle after midnight. And I totally came on board with that. That's a pretty fun one too. And then the Hornets actually just this past season had a really cool game again against Sacramento. And again, the game ended after midnight and the Hornets won that game too. So it seems like the Hornets do fun things against Sacramento late at night. And I love being part of those. And those are generally memorable.
Yeah, that was a great comeback. I couldn't believe it. And then just, I mean, you're in Charlotte doing the away game. So I guess you started right at 10:38 or something, and you didn't end until close to 1 a.m.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird day because, I woke up that day probably at 7:00 in the morning and my wife was saying, hey, go take out the garbage and take the kids to school and go pick up the dry cleaning. So I lived kind of a full normal day. And then I had to kind of gear up and have energy to do, a 3-hour basketball game that didn't end until, 1:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
We, under the question, we wrote our guesses for what you were going to say. And we had Miracle After Midnight and Jeremy Lamb Raptors. But we also put Kemba's 60. Kemba
that was awesome.
And him becoming the all-time scoring leader.
Yeah, that was cool. The only problem with Kemba being the all-time leading scorer was he did it against scrubs late in the game because the Hornets were getting trounced by Cleveland. Yeah. And it was clear he just wanted to get it over with. It was clear he wanted to do it at home. And so he was still on the floor against, 5 guys that, probably wouldn't be recognized in their high school nowadays because it was scrub time, but he was out there and it was cool because Kemba means a lot to me. Kemba was just a great human being and a great Hornet. And for him to be in the same sentence as Dell Curry, who's a great friend and a great human being, he's worthy of that. And so I was happy for him and happy for the organization.
Absolutely. So I had something. So like Steve Martin has been someone that both like my dad and I have had the honor of listening to when watching games because just he's been there for just so long and he's amazing. And so I guess my question is like, were you nervous having to fill such big shoes, and did he help you along the transition coming in?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's a great question because I had an experience prior. I worked for the Los Angeles Dodgers for 5 years, and I did the road games. Vince Scully, who is literally the biggest name in the history of TV play-by-play, he would do the home games, and he was, he'd been doing it since literally the 40s. And so everyone in LA just reveres Vin Scully, and Vin is, beyond reproach. He's fantastic. But I was always living in Chicago, and I would meet the team in St. Louis or Cincinnati or New York or whatever. And I didn't have much of a presence at all in LA because Vin was doing all the home Dodger games. So I didn't have any interaction with Vin. And that just kind of made it a little bit, I think it would have been easier in my life in LA if I had more interaction with Vin and get a chance to bounce things off of him and he get a chance to learn me, but whatever. So I came into this job with the Hornets and I was a little bit worried, because I would like to have a better relationship with Steve Martin than I had with, my prior situation. And I asked around and I said, how's Steve going to be? Is he okay? Because Steve went from doing TV to doing radio when I started. And everyone said, oh my God, just come back to us in 9 months after you've met this guy. And you're going to laugh. You even asked that question about being nervous about meeting Steve Martin. Steve couldn't have been a nicer man, couldn't have been more of a gentleman, couldn't have been more accommodating. Everywhere we went on the road, he would say, Eric, you sit next to me. And he would say, Eric, this is where we're going to go eat lunch. He'd say, Eric, this is where practice. These are the things that are going to happen now. He showed me the ropes to the nth degree. But maybe the most important thing that he did was when people would say, hey, what do you think of this Eric Collins? Have you heard him? He would always say, oh my God, he's unbelievable. I love him, which was a lie because Steve Martin was always doing radio when I was doing TV. There's no way he could have heard me. We were on the air at the exact same time. So he lied just for me to make my life easier, because if he would have said, oh, I haven't heard him or I don't know or whatever, that could have totally changed my path. But he made it easy on me by saying, oh, yes, he's a good guy. He's doing a good job. And I think people just took that and said, okay, if Steve Martin approves, we approve. Let's move on. So I can't say enough good things about Steve Martin.
That's awesome. I mean, I just think it's really cool. I mean, you've got a lot of longtime commentators, but just when my dad was younger and he was able to watch, he was watching him, and then I'm watching him in my middle school, early high school years. I think that's just pretty cool. So I'm really glad to hear that he was.
Well, that's one of the great things about doing what I do. One of the reasons why I wanted to be with the team is because if you're a play-by-play announcer and you have a good relationship with the team and with the fans and all that kind of stuff, it's a job where it can be multi-generational. If you work for ESPN, if you work for Fox, if you work for whatever, and you're just kind of a mercenary and you go in and you do Oklahoma City versus Phoenix one night, and then the next night you're doing Miami versus the Knicks, there's no connection with the people at home. Some people say, oh, he's a good announcer, or, oh, I don't like him, but there's nothing. So when you're the team, you can establish roots, and the difference between Kendall Gill and Alonzo Mourning and Gerald Wallace and Kemba Walker, and you can kind of go through the names and go through the eras, and you go through mothers and daughters and fathers and sons and a whole bunch of different people over the decades get a chance to listen to you, and you get a chance to listen back and have a relationship. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be with a team where I could establish something and be here long term, as opposed to just helicoptering and into some town and doing a game and then leaving. I wanted that feedback every single game of, okay, I like the people I'm broadcasting for. I know what they want to hear, and they know what to expect out of me. So we have this mutual symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. So I guess the next thing is, we see, or everyone sees you around the time you get on the air for the pregame show and the postgame show and the game, obviously. But what does like an afternoon consist of in terms of just preparation? Like how much of that do you do, or is it that much even, or I'm just
yeah, it's the same thing every game, and I'm old school and I do things the same way that I did, back in the day. And so this would be an example of just what I would do every single game. I have lists of the Hornets who they're playing. Everyone on the roster, I know there's at least 3 or 4 factoids about every single player who could possibly get in the game. If they're, where their uniform number came from, where they're born, who else was born close to them, what high school did they go to? Did they play with someone when they were in high school? This guy's a left-handed player. Where is he in the all-time list of left-handed playing scorers in the history of the NBA? Has anyone with his initials ever played in the NBA before? Cody Zeller was the first guy named Cody who ever played in the NBA. Now Cody Martin's the second. They're both on the same team. Just random stuff. I spend hours every single day or every single game thinking about stories, about individual players, about things that I've noticed. And I put it down and I regurgitate it every single game that I have. So I will always save, last year the Hornets played the Knicks 3 times. And every single time against the Knicks, I created something. This is against the Knicks and the Hornets last year. This is the Knicks and the Hornets last year. It's the exact same thing. I don't skip a step ever. This is the Knicks. This is the Hornets last year. So every single time the Knicks played the Hornets, I regurgitated every single note. I tried to add on the notes to what happened before, or things that I've learned, or stories that I've picked up. And that helps me, because when the game starts, I rarely will look down at my notes, but it's imprinted in my brain because I've written down so many times that I know that Julius Randle has, worn number 30 in high school and college, and for the 3 NBA teams he's played for, because his mom wore number 30 when she played college basketball when she was at University of Texas Arlington. It's important to him. And so that's where I kind of get it. But it's a continual process. It's not just sitting down at my desk for 3 hours before the game. It's sitting at my desk for 3 hours every single day of the year, reading stories, taking notes. And then when it's time to get ready for a game, it's compartmentalizing all those notes that I've taken throughout the course of 25 years of life onto one board. But yeah, it's a lot of work. When they actually turn on the lights, when I actually get to the arena, I've already done 5 hours of work for that particular game.
That's really cool. I think it's cool when I'm watching and you got some rookie on the Knicks that's at the line, and or anyone else, and you just say some snippet about them, like, wow, that's pretty cool. I never knew that.
Well, I used to be a sideline reporter, and the difference between a sideline reporter and a play-by-play guy is a sideline reporter is supposed to be adding to maybe what the announcers didn't see, or give a different perspective, or tell a story that maybe someone didn't know. And so I spent 6 years of my life as a sideline reporter with the Chicago Bulls back in the 90s. And that's kind of where my brain started to accumulate basketball minutia and knowledge and factoids and trivia. And my brain still loves that. And so as I'm getting ready for a game now as a play-by-play announcer, my brain is still used to looking for stories about Emmanuel Quickly's free throw percentage and how his mom taught him to look at that W on that net or on the rim before he shot every free throw, and things like that. Mm-hmm. So my brain works both as a sideline reporter and now as a play-by-play guy, which I think really works well together.
Yeah.
Going along with announcing, would you say there's any like keys to your success working with Dell Curry when it comes to announcing?
Well, Dell is one of the easiest guys, maybe the easiest guy I've ever worked with, because first of all, he's easygoing. He doesn't have an ego where he needs to prove anything. He's already comfortable with who he is as a human. He's comfortable with who he is as an announcer, who he was as a player. Obviously, he's got street cred to the nth degree because he played 10 years in Charlotte, 16 years in the league, and he's got two sons who are flat out ballers and some of the most distinctive players of their generation, maybe all time. Steph is he blows people's minds with how he's changed the game. He's probably changed the game more than Wilt Chamberlain did back when, he was the only 7-footer back in the 60s, and people are like, oh my God, let's widen the lane. Let's do something. So Steph is anyway, mind-blowing. But Dell is super easy because if you're working with the analyst, the important things for analysts is if you're good at one of these, you kind of got it made in the shade. Are you a good historian? Well, Dell is. He can tell you about the inaugural year of the Hornets. He can tell you about the 10 years that he spent with the Hornets. Do you have a sense of humor? Dell is hysterical. He tells good jokes, and he's also willing to be the foil. He's willing to to joke about himself and some of the things that he's seen. He's welcome to be the butt of the joke. You also have to be a good strategist. Dell watches every single game. He remembers plays. He remembers options from his playing days. You also need to be able to relate to today's player. Dell has intimate knowledge of NBA players because two sons playing in the league. He's got inside knowledge of what's going on in the Western Conference with him being able to watch every single Warriors game that Steph is playing against the Clippers and Suns and the Jazz. And he knows the Eastern Conference too, because he's watching Hornets games. He's watching Seth's games playing for the Philadelphia 76ers and who they're playing. So he is just immersed in the NBA, and he combines all of those things that you want out of an analyst into one package. So I've worked with guys sometimes who are just a one-trick pony. They're just good at strategy, X and O's. And that's good enough sometimes. But Dell is good at everything: strategy, history, trivia, humor, inside knowledge of the game. So I can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Because Dell, has been with you and obviously Steve Martin. And so, you've just kind of heard his side notes and all of that. And I think they're just, it's not to say he's like the wise guy, but he always kind of has something in his.
And the great thing about Dell too is I can tell him a trivia question and he'll you tell him last year, and then I can tell him the next year and it's still brand new to him because he'll forget it. And so that's great. He's like, it's perfect for me because my trivia questions sound like they're brand new every single year because I get the same reaction because he never remembers from one year to the next what the answer was.
Yeah.
What have you heard about the recent publicity of your announcing style?
I have. I try not to pay too much attention to it because it's a weird thing, and social media I stay away from. And usually my philosophy is if you're not willing to listen to the negative stuff, which I'm not, you shouldn't listen to the positive stuff. So I kind of just stay away from all of it. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy that the Hornets are getting attention. I'm happy that LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges and those guys are bringing attention to this organization and people getting excited about pro basketball again here in Charlotte. So it's all a good thing.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing is really kind of, did you have you're from Cleveland. Did you have any kind of favorite pro team growing up? And if you did, if it is the Cavaliers or something, is it hard to call games against them if you have some sort of little bit of a bias towards them?
Yeah. My favorite team always was the Cleveland Indians. To this day, at any time of the day, if the Indians are playing, I can probably tell you what the score is and what inning is it. I pay attention to all 162 games that the Indians play. That's just kind of who I was as a kid. My mom was a big Indians fan, and we shared that in common. So if the Indians ever won the World Series in my lifetime, I don't know what I would do. I'd wake up the next morning because my life would be complete. The Cavs won it back in 2016 against Dell Curry's Suns team, and that was pretty cool. I never got a chance to kind of rub it in, but that was phenomenal, just phenomenal. That changed my life. But yes, back when I was a younger broadcaster, I remember I used to fill in and I would do Chicago White Sox games, and the White Sox would play the Cleveland Indians. And I was a younger broadcaster, and I couldn't really contain it. And so I remember the Indians hit a double down the line late in the game, and I got really excited. And the analyst that I was working with looked at me kind of funny because, you're not supposed to get that excited about the other team doing something against the White Sox. And so I had to step it down a little bit. And early in my Hornets career here, I remember being in Cleveland and probably getting a little bit too amped up when Kevin Love had like a breakaway and something against the Hornets. And I kind of pumped up Kevin Love a little bit. And I said, okay, Eric, you got to remember your audience. So, but back then when I first started, I really didn't tell people that I was from Cleveland. I just didn't think there was any value in that. So I don't think anyone would have any clue that I was getting excited about what the Cavaliers were doing, because at my core, I'm a loyal guy. And I'll always be a Browns fan, an Indians fan, and a Cavaliers fan. I make no bones about it. I was born that way, and I'm not going to abandon these teams. They're my childhood favorite teams, and everyone in my family and all my friends, that's who we root for. So it is what it is. But I found places in my heart for the Charlotte Hornets, so we're good there.
That's great.
I have one last question that's kind of off script. So you got to watch Michael Jordan and LeBron play in person?
Oh yeah.
Who's better?
That's a great question. That's a phenomenal question. And I think that LeBron James is unbelievable. I think that the fact that he is maybe still the best player in the world at his age, 18 years into the league, what he's done longevity wise with that body of his, with just the breadth of his work, the numbers he's been able, is incredible. But what I will always say about Michael is everywhere we went, all eyes were on him. He knew it. Every single game, there was a moment in every game that he played when grown men who were accomplished players who are now in the Hall of Fame, would be afraid, because Michael was just that much of a badass. He was just a guy that carried himself different than everyone else. And people to this day, they react differently when they're in his presence than they do ordinarily. In a basketball game, basketball players would play differently because Michael Jordan was around, because there was always that fear factor. And he earned it. He was different than everyone else, and he was ruthless, and he was the most talented guy, but he also was the fiercest competitor. And I just got so much respect for Michael Jordan. I just, at a time when there was a lot of really good players, he was so much better than everyone else. LeBron is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't really like comparing these two because they both are just totally different cats. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I mean this in nothing but a good way, Michael was a killer. Like, he never even went to a game 7 in the playoffs because he didn't need to. He finished it off. He just always took your heart out when there was an opportunity. He never not once, let anyone off the hook. He went to 6 finals and he won them all, and never once went to a game 7. And to me, that is, he gave no quarter ever. And I really think that's pretty cool. So I will always say, unless LeBron plays at this level for another 15 years, Michael Jordan will always be the guy.
Yeah. I really wish that we could have been alive to watch the man play live, but I don't know. I guess I'm sure you've seen The Last Dance. I
was actually in it for a little bit. Yeah, you can actually, if you got a really discerning eye, you can see me in 2 occasions. It's pretty cool.
You got the episode and the time?
It was the one where they're talking about the Bulls and the media, and I'm looking pretty young, and I've got a sweater that I actually tucked into my pants, which I don't know what I was thinking about. If someone would have told me that 30 years later people would be looking at it during a pandemic, I probably would have had a different look. But I was in a media swarm. We were talking to Scottie Pippen, and I was the only person's face that you could actually see. And then there was another appearance that I was in. Michael was being interviewed in the locker room, and there's probably 30 people around him holding microphones. And I was way in the back looking totally disinterested. But that was my job. When I got hired in Chicago for the Bulls, we were the first people to ever do it. Everyone wanted anything they could get for the Bulls. And so when every Bulls game would end, they would have something called Live in the Locker Room. And we were on Fox Sports Chicago back then. And we would spend as much time as we needed, sometimes up to an hour and a half. And we would have a live microphone and a live camera and me in the locker room. And I would go and I would talk to Steve Kerr. And I'd say, hey, Steve, what about this? And then I'd always be looking out of the corner of my eye to see when Michael would come out. And then, we would talk to Scottie Pippen if he all of a sudden became available. And then I'd walk across the locker room. Remember, this is all live. And this was mind-blowing to people back in the 90s because no one had access to this.
Yeah.
And then I'd walk across the locker room and talk to Will Perdue or Luke Longley or whoever. And then finally, the money shot, Michael would come out. And 50 people would descend on him. And my job was to get the microphone close enough. And sometimes I'm crawling on the floor and I'm looking up, and other times I'm coming over with, and it was chaotic.
Yeah.
But we would wait there until we got Michael Jordan, and then I would just be part of the media pack interviewing him. And that's one of the shots where you can see me in The Last Dance, is trying to get in and talk to Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's a great experience. I'm sure you'll remember that for a while. But yeah, we, as just a Hornets fan for so long, like this has definitely been one of, if not the most exciting year to watch. I mean, it's almost just watching just little kids play in the backyard because they're all so young and they just enjoy themselves. No one's got a huge ego. They just go out there and play some ball, and that's been super fun to watch. And you just have made it so much more entertaining to watch, but with me and so many other people. So we just wanted to tell you that it's just really cool.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here at this time of my life. And, it's one of those things where a rising tide raises all boats. And the fact that LaMelo Ball, found his way here to the Hornets, the fact that Gordon Hayward decided he wanted to play here, and Terry Rozier took it up an extra notch, and Devontae Graham exceeded everyone's expectations as a former second-round pick, and Miles Bridges, just with his ferocity every single night. It's good to be a part of this organization and be here in town for this time period.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mr. Collins, we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. It's, we just really wanted to hear something from a guy that's, has been in front of sports for so long. And, this was really cool to hear. And
yeah, definitely a great experience for us. It will definitely be helpful as we go down the road, creating our own podcast and being able to talk about sports for this next upcoming month.
And we're
awesome.
Yeah, we're happy to, I can shoot you an email once we create our website, and if you want to check it out, you're welcome to. But yeah, it's
awesome. And we'll do. Emmett, Jack, really appreciate your interest, and thank you for spending some time with me. It's good. I like hanging out with you guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Yeah.